Okay, Lano.
You can start to talk.
Okay, let's do this.
Okay.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Jamie Sexton, and I'm with the Sheldon Schwartz for Congress campaign. And I want to thank you for taking time to join our telephone town hall this evening. We have our guest of honor, so if you will, Sheldon Schwartz, a candidate for Congress for the first time. And he will be say a few words, and he's going to take your questions over the next hour. If you have a question during our call, please press 0 on your touch-tone phone, and you will be connected to one of our volunteers who will set your question up, and then Sheldon will take your questions. So without further ado, I will turn it over to your next Congressman, Sheldon Schwartz.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for taking time out of your busy evening to spend some time with us tonight. I've been asked to give a brief introduction, and my introduction is going to be why I'm choosing to run for Congress. Politicians from both parties are taking us for granted. They make promises, they go to Washington, and in my opinion, they accomplish nothing. I'm tired of it. I think you are too, and I know that we deserve better. I just retired from practicing medicine for 43 years. I decided to forego my retirement and to try to do something in public service. I think we need a leader who will put the interests of the middle class first, especially on issues such as income equality, minimum wage, and we also need to start addressing important issues like climate change and immigration reform. The problem is that right now, almost all the people that represent us in Washington are professional politicians, and they all owe their existence to the party that helped elect them. They largely follow the party line, and they expect to be reelected by spouting platitudes and standard political talking points. And I believe that although the Republicans are much more responsible for the problems we face in Washington than Democrats, that neither side is without blame. What we need is non-knee-jerk Democrats who are willing to be good advocates, speak up to people in their own party and people and speak with people across the aisle trying to accomplish some change which is mandatory for this country. I will defend the Affordable Care Act. I have expertise in healthcare policy and medical economics. I'm a physician, and I'll work to improve and strengthen President Obama's healthcare reform law and ensure that as many Americans as possible receive quality health care. I'm going to work very hard to strengthen Medicare and Social Security. I won't let Republicans weaken Social Security and Medicare, but I'm also going to try to push to have Democrats modify Social Security and Medicare so that they're there in the future. We just can't protect it. We have to modify it, preserve it, and strengthen it so it's there not only for us but for future generations of Americans. I won't shy away from a fight. I'm not a knee-jerk Democrat. I'm not intimidated. I'm not going with a long-term plan to become senator, president, or governor. I'm biologically limited. I'm 67, 68 years old and would like to at most serve 3 or 4 terms. I believe that government needs to be more efficient. It needs to be more transparent. It needs to help the middle class and the lower class Americans. Upper class Americans are doing relatively well, and we have to start looking at all the issues that affect this country, and we have to be aggressive, and we have to try to make changes that are going to make us a stronger country in the future. And to me, that means better health care, education, Social Security, Medicare, a fair tax system, and ways to stimulate and give every American an opportunity to at least pursue the American dream. And I'll stop there and take any questions.
Thank you very much, Sheldon. We're getting a few questions in as we speak. I think one of the interesting things about your candidacy is if when you're elected, you're going to be, I think, the only Democrat as a former physician, be the only Democrat in Congress. And I think you being a Democrat and a physician, it gives you a certain, you're a certain level of expertise to be able to talk about the Affordable Care Act. And I'd like you to speak a little bit about that.
Well, there are actually 3 other Democrats who are doctors, plus one who can't vote, who's a woman from the Virgin Islands, who's actually a physician. One of them is, just for the record, an 80-year-old ex-psychiatrist who hasn't practiced medicine for 42 years. His name is Jim McDermott. He's from Washington. There's an administrator who is educated as a doctor, and there is, I think, one family practitioner. But the important point is there are 20-odd Republicans and 3 senators and about 17 Republican congresspeople who are doctors, and they have a big clout when it comes to talking about medical insurance, medical care, and so on. I understand what your point is. I strongly believe that the Democrats need some people who are non-attorneys, who bring a different skill set and can talk about health care. We know where the inefficiencies are. We know what needs to be done. And we not only have to work with Republicans to change things, but we have to educate our own caucus so that they understand, because many of them don't really understand how health care works either. And so it's very difficult to create efficiencies in health care and work towards everybody getting decent health care. I think that the Democrats need spokespeople who can go up there and talk about the so-called death panels and explain why it's foolishness, or explain why people should get HPV vaccine or other things, and understand the issues and understand the science. And right now there really are no spokespeople, for bar maybe one, for representing all the Democrats in Congress, and in the House and in the Senate.
Okay, great. Okay, we're going to take our first question from our audience here tonight. We're going to take a question from Charles in Framingham, and he wants to know how you feel about what your stance is on Social Security issues and welfare issues and the social safety net and the contract that the federal government has with the American people.
Thank you for the question. Is he going to ask a question, or is that the question?
I just did.
Okay. My feeling is that Medicare and Social Security are 2 vital programs for Americans. Not only has the government made a commitment, people have paid into it all their lives, and there ought to be a significant social net. First and foremost, I think from an ethical point of view, every American should be entitled to health care. To me, it's like food, clothing, shelter. So one, we need to figure out how to get the other Americans who don't get health care to get health care, because we do pay for it. We pay much more for it if it's not done efficiently. I believe that looking at Medicare and Social Security, that we have to make them more efficient. We have to find ways to get the people who need those programs to have them paid for. And in my belief, there are many Americans who don't need to get those programs, that are wealthier. And at a certain cutoff point, I believe there's certain people who, if they want to be part of Medicare, they really need to pay for it by themselves. It's a very high number of people and a relatively high amount of income. But for the average American, it's mandatory that Americans who work and live in this country be able to have a safe and secure retirement and get excellent health care and not have to worry about where their next meal is coming from or whether or not they can afford to live in their homes.
Fantastic. Just to let you know, if you have a question for Sheldon, please press 0 on your phone, and you'll be connected to one of our volunteers who will set your question up to be asked. So Sheldon, we had a question up about how you feel about education and what we can do to kind of help get our kids the education that they deserve.
Well, to me, the education is the linchpin of all advancement in this country. We need to try to give every American, to their ability, we need to give every American an excellent quality education. And we have to try as much as possible, and I think we failed greatly, to find a way to get affordable post-high school education for any American that's qualified to obtain it. The way that we remain a competitive nation, the way that we give security, economic security, and really security to our people is by having a country that's educated. And to me, it's therefore very important to have standards and expect that these standards are maintained, and try to make sure that all Americans have to pass these standards. We live in Massachusetts. We probably have the highest educational standards of any state in the country. I know there's a lot of controversy about the Common Core curriculum, and STEM, and some places are backing off. But in Massachusetts, the reason we're relatively, as a state, doing so well is because we are so educated and we're trying hard. There are problems in education, and there are problems and I think they're being approached in this state relatively well by having different alternatives to education that allow experiments to take place in the system and allow us to figure out the best way to give the best education. But I really do believe that education is the linchpin of everything, and every child who gets a high school education or 2 years of postgraduate education or a 4-year degree or more, those people not only earn more money, but they have more stable lives, and they rarely, obviously in this recent economic downturn, a lot of those people suffer, but they do much better economically and stability-wise than people who don't graduate. So our goal needs to be that everybody needs to graduate, because we can't have an underclass that's uneducated in this country. And I do believe it's the government's role to figure out partially the best way that that's achieved. Hello?
There we go. Okay. Like I said, like I said again, if you have any questions, please press 0, and we will take your questions appropriately. Okay. Now's a good time for us to take our first poll question. And what we'd like you to do is we're going to ask a question, and then you'll be able to answer your question via your touch-tone phone. So our first question is, generally speaking, how satisfied are you with the way Washington, D.C. is working these days? Press 1 if you are very satisfied with how Washington's working. Press 2 if you're satisfied with how Washington is working. Press 3 if you're dissatisfied. And press 4 if you're very dissatisfied with how Washington is working. There we go. Okay, Shelley, we've got a couple more questions up here. I've got an interesting question about Medicare means testing from a lady named Martha from Natick.
I believe in means testing. You have to look at the specific numbers to decide where, but I believe above a certain number, people who are in Medicare should pay for part of the government program that they receive. The vast majority of Americans are not going to obviously be affected by this, but I think, let's say hypothetically somebody as a family is earning $300,000 a year for many, many years, or $250,000 a year. The question is, why is the government providing them when they get to be 65? Or why am I, at age 65, I'm 67, eligible for Medicare? It really doesn't make economic sense. The money could be better spent for health care for people who need it. And if I paid an extra $3,000 a year or $4,000 a year, which I have, that would enable people who are less fortunate and less able to pay to get better access to health care. So I believe in means testing. The actual numbers have to be worked out through discussion, debate, and look at the actuarial numbers. But I think that to have millionaires and people who are even $500,000 a year retiring at age 65 and getting Medicare is not the best use of our dollars.
Okay, we're going to take a question from Stephen. Stephen, are you there?
I am.
Do you have a question
Hi,
for
Stephen.
Sheldon?
How are you?
Sure.
What can I answer or try to explain?
Yes, sir. I'm interested in how you would address climate change, since more and more it seems to be affecting all Americans between more devastating storms and stronger storms and sea level rise. And right here in Massachusetts, we've seen a devastating tornado in one town. We see sea level rise, beach erosion. And so it's certainly a global problem, but it's a problem that affects us, every human being. And matter of fact, we're in the sixth great extinction of species, so that's happening largely because of human-caused activities. So I'm curious about what you would do to address climate change.
Okay, I'm obviously a scientist. I actually am a physician, but I had a National Institute of Health grant. I've done a lot of basic science, taught at medical schools. Was last medical school I was at was Mass General, part of Harvard. First of all, climate change exists. We have too few people in Congress that just point out, are willing to say, climate change exists, and you can't, you just can't be a denier, and you can't tolerate it, because there is no good science that supports the other side. Now, what can we do? As a country, we can only do so much, because we only make up, although we burn a little more than our fair share of fuel, we only make up 5% of the world's population. So we alone can't do anything, but we can do some very smart things. One, we need to keep minimizing the amount of fossil fuels that we build. I, myself, am a proponent of nuclear power. I think with all the storage problems, when you look at them all, if you look at how much nuclear power is going to cost in the long run, and the fact that it doesn't have any emissions, in the long run, much of our electricity should be developed with nuclear. Now, that's only a component. We need to have wind, we need to have wave, we need to have geothermal, if practical. A lot of California's energy comes from geothermal, and we need solar. And actually, if one looks at it rationally, you realize that developing these industries actually hire tons of people and are products that could be exported around the world. So in the long run, getting rid of coal, having a carbon tax, which I'm in favor of in one form or another, I believe that you can't have somebody being able to burn coal and contaminate the entire environment, and they don't pay a tax for that, and somebody else is spending more money. They're a little less cost competitive to make solar, but it doesn't do anything negatively that we know about, and then one has trouble competing with the other because the other is cheaper. We have to equalize the playing field. Doing that, I drive a hybrid for one of my cars. I have a Ford Fusion hybrid, beautiful car. I get about 45, 47 miles to a gallon. I think we have to have incentives for people to insulate and do many things, use less fuel, be more practical, recycle, but we have to work on this, and we also have to work, instead of trying to find reasons not to join the rest of the world, we have to try to find ways to get the rest of the world to take this seriously and to help do it, because we already have 500 parts per million, I think, of carbon in the atmosphere, and we're getting to the point of no return. And yes, you're right, extinction of the species, spring comes earlier every year. This is not good. This is not good for the world, and it's surely not going to be good for many generations to come. So I think we have to recognize it exists and work to do something. But with our technology, actually for this country, we're a country who would benefit working on solutions, and we actually are making a lot of products that help. So I think we just have to keep doing that, and the government should be a source of research and a source of incentives, no matter what the Republicans say. Incentives, small grants for companies with good ideas, cheaper ways to make ethanol, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's the way we have to go. And I'm a strong proponent in anything that'll take our dependence away from fossil fuels.
Okay, thanks for that answer, Shelley. Okay, we're going to take a question from Diane in Southborough. Diane, you're on the line.
This is Diane.
Hi, Diane.
This is Diane from Southborough. My question is relative to your comment about government making things better for the middle class and the lower class. How do you propose to do that? Are you proposing incentives to help the middle class and the lower class improve themselves, or are you just going to make government make the world better for them?
That's a great question. And no, I don't think the government can make the world better for many people, honestly. People have to make it better for themselves, but they need the tools. Let me give you a few examples of things that I would do. Let me give you some tax examples that the Democrats really never spent time talking about. We have something called the Earned Income Tax Credit. Right now, it's limited to only people that have children. I think it should be expanded to couples that don't have children. I believe that we need there are some logical ways, incentives that could be developed so that universities can't keep increasing the cost of education many-fold greater than the cost of inflation. But it takes people who are going to advocate and for some changes that are really not going to be totally popular. I think the big thing that I'm recommending is that I think that everybody who earns, say, under $40,000, $50,000, that the first $40,000, $50,000 they earn, that the amount of money set aside for Social Security, which is right now 6.2%, should be decreased to 3.2%. That would save approximately, for a person earning $50,000, $1,500. That would save their employer $1,500. Then it would go up to the cap that exists now. I'd have a small window, and then above that, I'd have people keep paying up to earning $1 million, because there's no reason it should stop at $120,000. I'd start back at, say, about $220,000 and keep going up. That would give people another $1,500 in their pocket. There are a lot of things that can also be done on tax issues that are not being done that could help the middle class, and everything from more effective ways to, especially in this day and age of computerization, there are ways to radically bring down the cost of college education at good universities. Maybe there ought to be incentives for colleges to develop programs where people can much of the year study from home, get their degree, not have to go somewhere. I know it takes away the social aspect, but not have to pay for room and board. We also need to limit, and this is controversial, but if the government keeps giving all the money for student loans endlessly and doesn't have a cap, the universities are going to keep raising tuition. And what we need to do is tell them that we're only going to give people so much money, $30,000, $40,000, $25,000. That actually, most economists say, would force them to stop raising their tuitions, because then they would have to make up the difference to get a balanced student body. So there are a lot of things that could be done logically if Congress would just study the issue that could help the middle class. And obviously what we most importantly need are jobs, and we need policies that encourage people to have companies, to hire people, and we need to look at the inequality. And there are many ideas from many economists that are logical and not too terrible that can make it in a more equal playing field. And we don't have the will right now for anybody to really pursue those things. And so all that the Democrats sit silently and just talk about minimum wage, and although I'm in favor of modifying the minimum wage, that's not the only solution. And the big thing is education. The more education people get, the more they can demand for what they do, and that is a great equalizer. And we have to be able to have people have the ability to go on and get educated. And education just doesn't mean college, by the way. Good vocational training is vital because plumbers, carpenters, construction people, printers, electricians can have wonderfully good creative lives, earn good livings, and you do not have to go necessarily and get a PhD in astrophysics to be successful in this world. You just have to be a good worker with a good mind and be able to produce, and we need to flush out all the skills that people have in this country.
Okay. Sheldon, that was a fantastic answer. We've had several people who've been in the queue for a long time, so we need to kind of get through these people and get their questions answered.
I'll keep it a bit shorter.
Okay. Here's an interesting question. So from Marlene and Wayland. Okay, Marlene, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Hi,
My
Marlene.
question is, hi, I am concerned about Israel. And now,
Yes.
Unfortunately, the Hamas has joined forces with the Palestinians. What help can the United States be, in your opinion, in mitigating this terrible situation?
Well, as you well know, it's a very complex situation. The Palestinians, obviously, even though they're trying to have a two-state solution, Israel and the Palestinians, you really have two Palestinian states, one which is virtually out of control. I think that there are several things that the United States can do, and it's actually not just for Israel, it's actually for the bulk of the Palestinians. I've been to Israel many times, and it's for the bulk of the Palestinians, especially those that live in the West Bank. We need to encourage both parties to somehow figure out how they can negotiate something resembling a peace. And we need to make sure Israel is secure and safe. We need to be against BDS, banning divestment and sanctions. We also have to push both governments. They're both a little bit unwilling at times. Obviously, I understand the politics there, but we need to keep working and not give up. I don't want to see the U.S. create a vacuum and walk away. It's very complex. I thought we had it a few years ago under Bill Clinton. I've been totally disappointed much of my life because I've hoped to reach the age where before I pass away that there would be peace. And I really don't have a clean answer for what you do with Hamas. Nobody does. It's like asking what you can do with Hezbollah or what you can do with Iran. But I think the United States has to be there. They have to support Israel, and they have to support any democratic aspects of the Palestinians. Maybe the answer is that the West Bank and Israel make an agreement, and maybe for a long time Hamas is isolated in Gaza as a pariah nation. I would like to see something rather than nothing at all. But it's extremely complex and best left up honestly to the Israelis negotiating with the Palestinians, with us being an honest broker. Because if we stick our nose in too much, not only will there not be a good peace, but it could be a situation that neither of them really accept.
Thank you very much, Sheldon. We're going to take a question from Don and Wayland. Okay. Let's see. Don, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay,
and,
you have a question for Sheldon. Thank you.
Would he be in favor of the CDC treating gun violence as a public health issue?
Of course. It is. If you read, let me give you one pitch for everybody. You're all welcome to look at my website, which is Shelley, SHELLY, 2014.com. I have everything listed in about 10, 12, 14 different categories, and you can look up these things, and there are specific policy thoughts of mine that are meaningful. One, I strongly believe that nobody should be able to cut off any organization in the United States from doing research. Right now, Congress passed a bill that forbids any money to be spent like the NIH and the CDC. I know you're aware of this, but I don't know if a lot of other people do, from even researching gun violence. You can't even begin to talk about how you're going to improve something if you don't have any data. And it's like they're trying to cut off discussions or research into global warming. You can't do that. So one, we need the experts, the sociologists, the behaviorists, and so on to study this. Then we can come up with policies that maybe make better sense or have more political appeal, that we can get something changed. I honestly, and I'm not saying this is a cop-out, I have nothing against people owning guns. I don't really see the role of handguns for most people living in urban areas, but if people are stable, law-abiding, do not have mental problems, do not have histories of violence, by all means, if they want to have a gun, fine. But we need really to enforce the laws we have, and we need for them to be just common sense laws, and we need all the research we can get so that we can predict what laws will be effective and what laws won't, and so we can try to stop this scourge. Because to me, it's just a waste of human life and property that goes on where every day you're reading that somebody else shot 3 more people on a college campus or in a town. It's a waste, and I'd be open to any suggestion that had a modicum of possibility of succeeding in just limiting guns to people who could handle it. I also believe that just like a car, you have to get a license and you have to prove that you can drive it. I think people who buy guns should have to get a license and prove that they know how to use the gun, secure the gun, safely store the gun. It's a potential instrument of death, and it should be treated with respect. It just shouldn't be, it's overly simplistic to say it's the Second Amendment and just a right. It goes far beyond that.
Okay. All right. We're going to now take another poll question from our audience. Our second question is, here we go. Our second question is basically, so now we've heard from Shelley, his commitment from the district. We've heard him, explain several of his positions about how he wants to do his part to change how Congress does business. So after hearing that, how open would you be to supporting him? So on your phone, press 1 if you are open to supporting him. Press 2 if you are somewhat open to supporting him. Press 3 if you're just a little open to supporting him. Or press 4 if you're still not open to supporting him. Okay. All right, we're going to move on to, we've got several more people in the queue to take questions. Just remember, if you have any questions, we've got about another 25 minutes left of the call. If you have any questions, again, please press 0 on your touch-tone phone. Okay, we're going to take a question from Pauline in Lexington.
Hi, Pauline.
Pauline, this is Shelley.
Hello? Pauline?
Hi. I was wondering what makes you more qualified to represent us than Catherine Clark?
Okay. I usually don't spend a lot of time trying to talk about Catherine Clark, but to be candid, I believe that Catherine Clark is representative of what the problem is. A professional politician who benefits from the party, who basically follows the talking points of the party, what I call the platitudes. Democrats are in favor of gun control. Well, yes, but right now we can't pass gun control. Democrats want to protect Social Security, which means don't change it. If we don't change it, it's going to die. Democrats want to have income equality, but they don't want to tamper with any of the programs that exist. So the problem is that we have a lot of people on both sides of the aisle who just say something, but they don't really have any policies. If you really go a little deeper, these are platitudes. The 5 things on Catherine Clark's last mailer when she ran for office are the 5 points that best tested in Washington, D.C. for the Democratic Party. And if you go across the country, you'll find that almost every congressperson that ran from the Democratic Party said these are the 5 things that they believe in. That's good. But the problem is Catherine Clark knows nothing really, probably, about health care and how to make it cheaper, more efficient, and where the problems exist, and also where the solutions lie. She's not a person that has any expertise in healthcare policy. She's not somebody who has any expertise in medical economics. Catherine Clark believes in protecting people from domestic violence. Her way of approaching it is more of the legalistic lawyer point of view, which I would call the traditional politician point of view. After somebody commits a crime, arrest them, and throw away the key. I believe, both philosophically but as a physician, most people who commit acts of violence are in need of psychiatric care. They're in need of psychiatric care long before they commit the crime. And so what I would commit myself to is to try to prevent these crimes from occurring, which means education, mental health access, real mental health access, because everybody who's abused becomes an abuser. I mean, in a statistical sense. So I think that I look at it more as a scientist, data-driven. I believe I'm much more of an advocate for what I believe in, and I would be willing to go and talk across the aisle, something which is not done almost by anyone in Washington. I would be willing to go across the aisle and try to find those areas where Democrats and Republicans could agree, and there are issues where they can agree because Republicans will see it as efficiencies and Democrats will see it as being able to broaden something, and that's what I think is needed. Somebody who's going to go, somebody who doesn't want to be there for 20 years, somebody who's just going to go work and then come back, be transparent. And the other thing, I'm extremely concerned about bang for the buck. I'm an entrepreneur. I have some investments, some businesses in addition, and I believe that we have to encourage entrepreneurship. We have to limit the excesses, but what we have to do, and I don't think Catherine Clark really understands this even in the way she actually functions and votes, I believe that we have to try to expand jobs and opportunities, and we need to be much more open as Democrats to how the economy truly works, because not all the answers lie in government, and we have to try to find a happy medium, and I think the happy medium is not there, especially because we really don't talk to each other. And just as much, even though Republicans don't talk at all to Democrats, very few Democrats actually talk to any Republicans. And that's not my estimation. You can read it in the New York Times or Washington Post. They say these people never talk, they never go to dinner, they never even exchange pleasantries, and then they go home to their districts and they hear what they want to hear. I understand what people in Massachusetts want. I think we need to try to reach across the aisle and try to find some areas of common sense and common interest. And I would be willing to do that. And that's why I'm willing to give up part of my retirement. I'm not looking to have a long and very famous political career.
Thank you very much, Shelley. Okay, we're going to take a question from William in Westford. William, are you there?
Yes, I am. You've already touched on this bit, but what do you think of the proposal to solve some of our Social Security and Medicare problems by simply removing the upper limit on the annual taxes on wages that we have for these programs? And however, let it flow such that however much you earn is taxed for Social Security and Medicare.
I basically was saying that. I made a cutoff at $1 million. The truth of the matter is, I believe that Medicare payments made by us when we go to work and Medicare and Social Security should really go away. It should be part of the general tax program. It should be, the reason I was advocating for 3.2% and 6.2% and then letting it go up, because I think that it, like Warren Buffett says, his secretary pays more in percentage of tax than he does. It needs to be progressive, not regressive. I think that every American should owe this amount of money on every dollar that they earn, and it should go into the tax fund. So it's not somebody, the reason that it has a cap is because especially the conservatives, but even many liberals say, well, if you're contributing to your own Social Security, if you're contributing to your own Medicare, then how much can you contribute if you're going to get so little back? So they put caps on. If you make it part of the tax system, which is what most economists recommend, then you just pay it. And yeah, they would pay another 5 or 6% in taxes. I know realistically right now that'll be impossible to obtain. But short of that, then you just take the cap off and you let it rise, and they pay 7.45% of every dollar earned for every dollar that they do earn on their job. I'd also get rid of the thing which a lot of them in Wall Street benefit from, and I should point out the Democratic Congress people, senators, are the ones who have backed this thing but carried interest in all these hedge funds that Charles Schumer has backed and Hillary Clinton backed and all these people backed is really just a subsidy for the wealthiest of Americans. And I think they should pay the normal taxes, normal Social Security, and yes, then we'd have a lot more money, and then these programs would be solvent, and then we could do a lot more with these programs. I just want to point out one thing. Only 2/3 of all the money spent on Social Security goes for what we consider regular Social Security. 1/3 goes for disabled people and dependent orphans and widows. And the problem is that that's why there's so little money to go around. We need more money, and we need to do it in a way that it doesn't keep taxing the middle class and the lower class, or even the top of the middle class. We need to get it from the very wealthy people, and it's not a problem. They can afford it, and they still would be paying less taxes than anywhere in the world, just about. I used to live in Belgium. When you earned about $75,000 to $80,000 in Belgium, your tax rate was about 75 to 80%. And so Americans don't realize how little taxes we pay in totality. I'm not advocating big increases. I'm just saying that people that earn millions of dollars can afford to spend another $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 a year to make it available for other people. So I agree with you. Take the cap off or integrate it into the tax system, but these people should not have a cap. And that's in my issues, by the way, if you go to the website.
Okay, Shelley, we're going to take a question from Lori.
Hi, Lori.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing fine. I have a question on, when you talk about Social Security reform.
Yes.
Okay, I just, this is a very strong subject for me, very emotional subject for me, because what my concern about Social Security reform is, in dealing with Social Security over the last 7 years that I've dealt with them, okay, and I've written so many letters to so many people about the fact that, if you go into the Social Security office and you deal with one case manager, okay, right, the outcome is going to be totally different each time you deal with a different case manager. Okay, and are you talking about, you have to get to
let me explain two things. One, I'm saying that Social Security right now has a retirement age of 65, okay? I think when Social Security came about in the 1930s, the average person lived to be about 64. So almost nobody lived long enough to get Social Security. I'm saying that over the next 10, 15 years, it'd be increased to age 70, and that would buy us a lot more money coming in. And people are living to be 85 now. They're not dying at 65. We can't have everybody in the country retiring at 65 because of Social Security. The system will just self-destruct. Now, you're raising a different issue, which I feel very, very, very strongly about, and that is government efficiency. I do not blame government workers. I think they actually try their best. But government management is terrible. And that's because, I mean, let me give you an example. When you have these big lawsuits with the government lawyer gets paid $150,000 or $170,000 a year, and you could say, well, that's fine. But they're usually up against a law firm where each of the lawyers is earning $1.5 million, and they have all the money they need to pursue all the issues that they need. Our government, if it's going to compete on an even paying field, has to start paying people more. They have to hire real managers who know how to manage. I mean, the Defense Department is $600 billion. It's bigger than any company in the world. And the people that are managing it many of them, the managers, not the workers, couldn't get a job in private enterprise. And the problem is they're there and they're not followed and they waste. I'll give you another example. There's 60, 70 different departments in the government or commissions or agencies that get food to people who need it in America. You only need 1 or 2 or 3 to get food to people who need it in America. We have all these things that are developed. They stay there forever. They waste our money. The government, the Congress people, and for the woman who asked a question about Catherine Clark, the Congress people vote for a bill. They never want a bill that's $19 billion, $723 billion, $723 million. They always round it up. We'll make the bill $20 billion. Nobody spends that money like it's their own. They need to start looking at that money like their own. If that bill could be $19 billion instead of $20 billion, we have to look at outcomes. We got to get them better computer systems. We have to have more consistency, like you said. That's the way it has to be. Working with the government should almost be like when you get online and you work with Amazon or Home Depot or Apple. I mean, the technology's there. We need to upgrade our government so it's efficient. It's not the workers. It's the people who are in charge of the workers. We need to look very carefully how we get bang for the buck. And I'm terribly disappointed every time I write my check for taxes, how much of this is really going for efficient government and how much of this is going for waste. And we need to get rid of the waste. And Democrats need to admit that there's a lot of waste. And that's not to say the programs aren't important, but we need to be efficient. We need to run government programs kind of like the way we run our houses. We try to catch the nickels and the dimes. We just don't ignore them because they don't mean anything. And that's the problem you're facing, lack of management, lack of managerial controls. And I've been in the same situation. I have a 97-year-old mother-in-law, and trying to get services for her is very difficult, and get consistent answers is very difficult. So, yes, I think we need advocates who bring real-world experience to Washington and try to get common-sense answers. And that's what I don't think we're getting. We're getting professional politicians, and they really are just happy being politicians. They don't really have the same drive. This is their career. Their career is to keep being a politician. And I think, personally, although not asked, I think we need some sort of term limits. I'd like to see Congress people and senators all limited to 12 years, because I think that if we staggered it right and did it right, we would get the turnover, we'd get fresh ideas, and nobody would get lazy sitting in Washington. And they would understand that they have to do something else in their life besides just work in Congress. And right now, people make their entire careers there. And then their family members become lobbyists. Or if they lose, they become lobbyists. And I think it's a corrupt, wasteful system. I think it's broken, and it needs to be fixed. And we need to bring new ideas and new people into it.
Thank you, Shelley. We're going to take a question from Pat, who has a question about Medicare.
Yes.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, good, thank you. My question is in regards to Medicare. I happen to have one of those illnesses that the conventional doctors don't know about and don't care to know about. And I've been being treated with the integrative medicine doctors, and they've been doing they integrate conventional medicine with holistic medicine.
Yeah. I've
been doing much, much better. I'm disabled. I've been disabled for a number of years because of my illness. I'm getting better. But now that the Medicare, the doctors have quit me, dropped me because Medicare, because of all the problems with Medicare. They don't want to take anybody on Medicare anymore. So
let me try to stay on the line if I don't answer your question well, because I want you to be able to follow up and tell me. Let me explain to you what part of the problem is. We're living in an era of what they call evidence-based medicine, okay? That means that, there probably are holistic things that work, there are alternative things that work. But what most of us are believing now is that some of them work some of the time, but not too often. And I'm not talking about your particular case. What we need is we need to test these holistic things and everything else, and we need to see what works and what doesn't. Some of them probably work, like acupuncture works. I'll give you an example. It works for certain things and doesn't work for other things. So it's not that acupuncture is no good or that it's perfect for everything. The same thing with classical medicine. We do a terrible job on back pain. We do a terrible thing on some of these chronic syndromes that you probably have. Whether it has a name or not is not important. What we need to do is have evidence-based medicine. We need to stop paying for things that statistically don't work, and we need to experiment with and pursue those things that do work. And a perfect example, and I'm not trying to get off on a tangent, is like the question of medical marijuana. From a doctor's point of view, it needs to be tested, explored, see if it works, and if it works, it ought to be used. We shouldn't have a bunch of Congress people or attorneys, or like my opponent, making decisions based on no science, but making decisions based on their biases. If something works medically, it works. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And we can't be hung up on what we call something. And so my feeling is the National Institute of Health, which I know is now studying holistic and non-conventional medicine at BI. They have an entire department that's studying this. We need to be able to find out which of these non-traditional forms of medicine works and which of them fails. And because classical medicine right now doesn't answer every question. I don't know if that answers your question, but... Well,
it does. It still leaves me where I am. And
the problem is this, is Medicare is an organization. It's a government agency. It's just like any insurance company. They are trying to make decisions on does the therapy make sense and how are they going to pay for it. And they need to understand if there's evidence or not. And the problem is that some people get better even when the evidence is low, and part of science is studying these things as things which work. There's no one solution for a particular medical disorder because certain disorders disappear and aren't real, and a few people have them and they just can't explain why a few people are sick. And other disorders like that grow in number, and then they start to get classified, and then they start to study them more. And so you got to be skeptical about whether something exists, but on the other hand, from a scientific point of view, you can't reject it just because you can't explain it. And so Medicare, unfortunately, is a government-run organization with boards of people who make decisions, and there's no easy answer because you're basically asking, how do you decide, how do you treat a disease in our country in 2014, and the government doesn't want to pay for something that they're convinced doesn't work. And the burden, unfortunately, is on the patient and the healthcare provider to make the argument that they're being overly simplistic. And for the people that don't get it, like you, the problem is there's almost nothing that can change that unless the science changes. And that's really the problem. And science moves relatively slowly. So unfortunately, some people, for want of a better word, get screwed in the system. And that's why you need caring, compassionate people take care of you. But most of the people like me, 1/3 or more of the people I saw never paid me. I worked in a psych hospital as an intern for the last 6 years. And many of these providers will also help you without necessarily getting remuneration, because most of us are willing to have several people or a certain percentage of our practice where we don't get paid. And unfortunately, that's the best that can happen now because the government has rules, and it's very hard to change those rules. And it's very hard to change the rules of private insurance companies also. They're all looking at it from a point of view of cost and proof. It's a very complex question, very complex. I'm sorry I can't give you any simple answer.
Well, Shelley, thank you for that. That was a very in-depth, very detailed answer for that young lady, and we feel for her circumstance. But you said her government in a lot of ways is there's a lot of well-meaning people in government who try to do well, but it's a lot of ways it becomes too big, and if we can make things more efficient, we should.
You say it better than I do. Go ahead.
We've got just a few minutes left. Shelley, if you want to just kind of address the people who are still on the line, and
okay.
Looks like we've got we just popped in one more question. We got a question from Dan, and it's about education. We've got just a few minutes left. Okay.
Go ahead, Dan.
Hold on, Dan, are you on the line?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hi, Dan.
Hi, Shelley.
I guess we're saving the last for best.
I hope so. No pressure. No pressure. I just have a quick question about education policy. I understand that Massachusetts, obviously, compared to a lot of other states, has a pretty decent education system. But I just wonder if you do go to Washington, what your actions, what you would like to do to help and keep improving the education system for all of us. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the question. I'm in favor of data-driven educational policy. My son-in-law is a PhD in educational policy, University of Pittsburgh, one of the better educational policy schools in the country. I think what we have to do is look at what makes sense, do outcomes constantly, and we have to decide what's working and what's not. I personally, from a governmental testing point of view, would not have started the Affordable Care Act in 50 states. And I wouldn't start any program in 50 states. I'd go to a state like Idaho. I'd go to a state like Delaware. I would test these things for a year or two. I'd see what happens, what the unintended consequences are, and then I'd modify them. We do everything on an on-off switch. 300 million people don't have something. Tomorrow they have it. So when you look at something like education reform, the president and my opponent are in favor of universal pre-K, for instance. All the experts say that that pre-K should probably only be given by the government to about 30% of the people. Most of the kids who get Head Start and so on. It doesn't really teach them. They learn self-respect, self-esteem. They're 3 years old. They're not learning to read and do math. But it makes them better students going forward. Education is a zero-sum game, unfortunately. The government's unwilling to spend a lot more money. So if we take $6-7 billion more and give people like me pre-K for my children, then we're taking money away from high school education or something else. Therefore, I think what we have to do is decide where we're going to use our dollars best and not just make slogans. For the woman who asked me about Catherine Clark, not pre-K for everyone, pre-K for the people who really need it, the people who can't afford to pay for it themselves. That's how you should do things, so that our money can get the biggest bang for the buck, and then we get our experts to study things, look at outcomes, and we may decide. I'll give you two quick examples. It's been, for a long time, they thought that smaller classrooms really helped, and all these schools were forced to change to smaller classrooms, and the outcomes didn't really improve. And then they decided that everybody needed computers and toys, and they spent a fortune on that, and most of the outcomes were unchanged. And so what looks good and looks gimmicky and looks timely is not the right decision necessarily. The experts are saying, don't rush into this. But the politicians are saying, oh, this is great. More computers, they have to work. Nothing has to work. Therefore, we have to look at what the experts know, try to integrate what we know. That's true for environmental, for climate change. That's true for medical care. That's true for anything. Fluoridation, vaccines, EPA. We have to know what the science is and what the data is, and then we have to do it. If I go to Washington, I'm going to follow the data stream, and I'm going to do what makes sense. But really what I think we need is testing to a point, but not go crazy on testing, but expectations that students have real testing so we can see if they're really learning something. Not like Tennessee, Kentucky, and half these states where they keep making the test easier so the test scores are better. the Massachusetts example should be something that we should be advocating around the country, because Massachusetts actually is educating their students better and better every year, and it's real. And the experts in this country look at Massachusetts and say other states should adopt these things. And so we should be proud of what we do. We're doing it the right way, and we should continue to do it this way. And that's where the data drives us. I hope that answer was sufficient.
Thank you, Shelley. And sadly, our time is up this evening. I want to thank everybody for joining our call, and I want to thank our staff who were sending those wonderful questions over to Shelley. And as always, thank Shelley for his insightful answers that are in such detail that I think really people get a real sense of what to think of you. Shelley, if you have a few words to say, let's close this thing up. And remember,
Okay.
if you have any questions about Shelley or his campaign, please go to his website, www.shelley2014.com. Close it up, Shelley.
Okay. Listen, I do want to thank those of you who are left for spending an hour with me tonight. I really, maybe I'm overly idealistic, but I really believe that we can still make things better. If we give up, then we have no future. I think that we have to take good ideas, people who are advocates. I kind of liken myself as a little nicer Barney Frank or Bernie Sanders. I speak what I believe. I'm not afraid to speak to people, and I am not afraid to go into an honest exchange of ideas. I think that there are tons of great ideas out there, but that most of our politicians really don't read and know what they should know. They just follow the orthodoxy of their party. We need people who are non-knee-jerk Democrats, who are true progressives, who believe that we need the right type of change, who are not just going to talk about the platitudes, who are going to try to get something done, bang for the buck, and improve Social Security, Medicare, provide health care, improve education, so that we have a better country to give to our children and grandchildren. I thank you again for spending time with me this evening. Thank you.